The first hints of humanity's entry into the galactic stage were far from grand. Their initial exploration efforts were met with indifference. Earth had barely begun to understand the mechanics of faster-than-light travel, and most of the galaxy's advanced civilizations viewed them as little more than another curious species fumbling around the edges of the cosmos. Humanity's technological prowess was considered primitive, their ships outdated, their weapons ineffective. Still, Earth's unyielding drive for survival and discovery had brought them to this moment. The galaxy was vast, but they had a spark, an untapped potential that many didn't see, and it was about to be revealed. At the heart of Earth's rising hope was a group of visionary engineers and military strategists. Their ambition had started with a simple goal: to create a weapon that could level the playing field. They called it the railgun, a piece of technology that seemed almost rudimentary compared to the glittering, hyper-advanced weaponry of other races. But what it lacked in sophistication, it made up for in raw power. On a quiet morning in a facility hidden deep within Earth's northern reaches, the human railgun was tested for the first time. The room buzzed with excitement and tension. A small group of scientists and military officers gathered to witness the moment that could change everything. A massive asteroid drifted through space, a perfect target for this experimental weapon. It was the only test humanity would get. Fail, and they'd remain forever stuck in the shadow of the galaxy's more powerful races. Succeed, and they would have the key to a future beyond their world. The railgun was mounted on a makeshift station designed for the test. The air was thick with anticipation as one of the lead engineers, Dr. Emma Klein, stood by the controls. Her fingers hovered over the switch. "Ready, Dr. Klein," a technician called out. She nodded, and with a deep breath, pressed the button. The sound of the gun's activation was deafening, a crack that echoed through the facility, followed by the rapid whine of energy being funneled into the massive railgun's coils. The projectile, a simple piece of metal, was hurled out at unimaginable speeds. The effect was instantaneous. A flash of light. The asteroid, once massive and unyielding, was ripped apart in a spectacular explosion, sending debris scattering in all directions. The room erupted in cheers, but Dr. Klein's face was grim. She had known the risks. They had succeeded in creating something that could change the entire course of galactic history, but such power came with no guarantees. Within hours, news of the test spread across Earth. It wasn't long before it reached the ears of other species, those who had long looked down on humanity. The Exarathians, a race of militaristic beings known for their empire-building and authoritarianism, scoffed at the humans' primitive weapon, dismissing it as a mere curiosity. Their arrogance was unmatched, and they believed no threat, however small, could challenge their hold on the galaxy. But humanity's railgun was unlike anything they had encountered before. It wasn't just the power of the weapon that would transform the future, it was the human drive behind it. The drive to survive, the drive to innovate, the drive to challenge what was considered impossible. The first rumblings of a new era began as factions across the galaxy shifted their attention to Earth. The tide of history was turning, but no one knew it yet. The galaxy's long-held assumptions about the power structures were about to be shattered by a single species that had only just begun to realize its true potential. The sun hung high in the sky, casting a golden glow over Earth's cities, perfectly ordinary, as if nothing was amiss. In a remote military satellite station orbiting the planet, technicians hummed through their daily routines, unaware of the storm approaching. At first, the anomaly was detected as a small blip on the radar, just another cosmic event, another asteroid passing by too close. But then, the blips grew and grew. Each one seemed more unnatural than the last. On Earth's surface, in the middle of a crowded downtown, no one noticed the first flash in the sky. It was too bright, too fast, and too sudden. By the time anyone could react, the sky had turned from a peaceful blue to a burning orange. Within seconds, the first of the alien ships tore through Earth's atmosphere like a spear. It tore through the clouds and the air itself, leaving a trail of devastation. As the ship descended, others followed, hundreds of them, gleaming and massive, each one as large as a city block. They had arrived without warning, as if they had simply materialized from nowhere. The military scrambled to launch their defenses, but Earth's greatest weapons, nuclear missiles, advanced fighter jets, and state-of-the-art air defenses, seemed like toys against these invaders. The first barrage from the alien ships devastated the planet's largest cities: New York, London, Tokyo, Shanghai. Each ship unleashed its destructive firepower with clinical precision, crumbling buildings, collapsing bridges, and toppling skyscrapers like matchsticks. The explosions were thunderous, shaking the very earth beneath human feet. Across the globe, chaos erupted. People fled in terror, their faces painted with the stark horror of realizing that Earth was not alone in the universe. They weren't prepared. No one had been prepared for this. Earth's greatest minds had never even considered the idea that an invasion was possible. In Washington, D.C., the president watched helplessly as the feed from the satellites showed the devastating carnage. The president's eyes, cold and resolute, glinted with something akin to determination as military commanders screamed in the background, trying to formulate a plan of action. But the numbers were stacked against them. The Xathrians were methodical, their strikes focused on crippling Earth's military capability before moving in to destroy the planet's major population centers. Their ships hovered above each city, releasing wave after wave of energy weapons that tore through buildings, leaving nothing but smoldering ruins. The military response was futile. No fighter jet could touch them, no missile could pierce their shields. Despite this, scattered pockets of resistance began to form. In New York, a group of civilians, led by an ex-soldier, began organizing small attacks. With makeshift weapons and a desperate desire to survive, they engaged in guerrilla tactics, making their mark on the invading forces. Though their numbers were few and their resources limited, their tenacity proved that humanity was far from helpless. These early skirmishes became the first signs that the invaders might have underestimated Earth's ability to fight back. Meanwhile, in the heart of the Xathrian command ship, the alien leaders observed Earth's counterattacks with growing interest. Their strategy was simple: shock and awe, obliterate humanity's infrastructure, and force the survivors into submission. They expected fear, despair, and surrender, but what they saw instead unsettled them. Determination. There were humans, even now, defying the overwhelming odds. The first strike wasn't just an invasion, it was a message. But as the humans retaliated, the Xathrians learned that it was a message they might regret sending. Humanity, though battered, was not easily defeated. The sounds of destruction were still ringing through the air, a constant hum of chaos and fire. Smoke plumed from the wreckage of once thriving cities, while the remains of shattered infrastructure lay scattered like forgotten relics. But amid the ruins, something unexpected was happening. Amid the carnage, humanity was beginning to find something deeper than just survival: unity. In the midst of the devastation, the world's leaders, once divided by borders and ideologies, realized the same bitter truth. Their survival depended not on their differences, but on their ability to cooperate. Communication channels were established between the remaining global powers, former rivals, now bound by necessity. The United Nations, which had once been a frail institution bogged down by political squabbles, became the nucleus of a new desperate alliance. The calls for unity echoed through every corner of the planet, from the ragged halls of the White House to the fortified bunkers beneath the Great Wall of China. Leaders who had once thought of war as inevitable now sought peace with their former enemies. A new understanding spread quickly. No country, no matter how powerful, could survive this alone. The world was united in its most basic primal need: to fight for its existence. Behind closed doors, in the shadow of Earth's most secure locations, military planners scrambled to organize humanity's first truly global defense initiative. Nations pooled their resources, their technology, and their expertise. The fear of total extinction bound them together, making former geopolitical boundaries irrelevant. What mattered now was the fight for Earth, and the fight to protect everything they held dear. At the heart of this new alliance, human ingenuity was being tested like never before. Earth's greatest minds, scientists and engineers, once spread across the globe and often in conflict, now worked together in shared purpose. They took stock of the resources they had left. Weapons from old wars, ancient military blueprints, and salvaged alien technology were all examined, altered, and adapted to create a new kind of war machine. The first stages of Earth's battle fleet began to take shape, though it was far from the sleek, powerful vessels that the world had once imagined in science fiction. Earth's fleet was cobbled together with whatever materials could be found: old warships, hastily constructed fighters, and refurbished aircraft. They were the very definition of a ragtag fleet, but in a way that was their greatest strength. The world watched as these new ships emerged from hidden underground hangars, each one a patchwork of steel and alien metal. Pilots, once ordinary civilians or soldiers in training, volunteered for dangerous missions. Every individual, from engineers in labs to farmers in fields, now had a part to play in the defense of Earth. A sense of shared destiny began to rise from the ashes of the old world. It was clear. This was no longer just a fight for survival. It was a fight for humanity's future. The atmosphere was charged with an electric sense of urgency. In Tokyo, the Japanese fleet had begun retrofitting their naval vessels with alien technology. In Moscow, Russian engineers worked day and night to reverse engineer the weapons left behind by the invaders. In the United States, old Cold War defense programs were pulled from the archives, now infused with new life as humans adapted them to meet the current threat. Across the world, public morale was low, but the soldiers, those who had seen firsthand the horrors of the alien invasion, understood that their duty was greater than any individual nation. It was a collective fight for the survival of humanity. The world's military leaders issued broadcasts, calling on every nation's citizens to stand strong and trust in their new allies. "We may be broken, but we are not finished," they declared. "Together, we will rise." Meanwhile, on the alien ships orbiting Earth, the Xathrians observed with an increasing sense of unease. The chaos they had expected to break humanity's spirit was now transforming into something they had not anticipated: resistance. The planet's scattered forces were coming together in a way the Xathrians hadn't prepared for. They thought the humans would crumble in the face of overwhelming destruction. They were wrong. As Earth began to rally, one thing became clear to everyone. The fight for Earth was only just beginning. The Xathrians had awakened something in humanity, and now there would be no turning back. As Earth's fragmented forces rallied under a single banner, the unthinkable began to take shape: an army, a fleet, born from the ashes of devastation. What had once been a scattering of broken nations now transformed into a singular force, determined to reclaim their planet. But for all their newfound unity, humanity was still facing a mountain of obstacles. Earth had never been prepared for interstellar war. There were no plans, no advanced fleets awaiting activation, and no training for combat against technologically superior extraterrestrials. Yet human beings thrived in chaos. While the world's major cities lay in ruin, an unexpected surge of resourcefulness bloomed across the globe. Engineers, scientists, and military leaders pooled their knowledge, combining what they knew of terrestrial and alien technology. They dove into the wreckage of downed Xathrian ships, scavenging for pieces of the invaders' advanced materials and weaponry. While Earth's technology was nowhere near as advanced, its greatest strength lay in its adaptability. Humans had always been able to turn the tide when everything seemed lost. In underground bunkers and hastily constructed laboratories, Earth's most brilliant minds worked tirelessly, determined to create something that could stand against the Xathrians' overwhelming might. At first, it seemed like a hopeless endeavor. The alien ships, with their imposing weaponry and impenetrable shields, were beyond anything humanity had ever encountered. Earth's military might was nothing more than a skeleton crew, scrambling to develop rudimentary technology for space combat. But as the days wore on, the impossible began to happen. Using the wreckage of a destroyed Sathrian fighter, a group of military engineers from Europe managed to develop a rudimentary prototype for an anti-shield weapon. Another group of engineers, led by an unlikely team of Russian and Indian scientists, repurposed an old space station's nuclear power cores to fuel Earth's new fleet. What began as a desperate effort to stay afloat became an exercise in ingenuity. The fleet took shape in secret, an enormous and hurriedly assembled armada of warships, fighters, and resourceful soldiers. The first few ships were cobbled together from anything humanity could find. Scrap metal from old warships, engines from defunct satellites, and hulls patched together with alien alloys. They weren't beautiful or sleek. They were flawed, jagged, but they carried with them the fierce determination of the human spirit. Each vessel represented a piece of humanity's collective effort. Every corner of Earth, from Africa to the Americas, contributed something to the cause. Even civilians who had never known war joined in, with their skills in every imaginable field becoming indispensable in the creation of the fleet. The cries of laborers on assembly lines echoed through the factories, the hum of welding torches blending with the distant sounds of conflict. The first battle-tested ship, the Vanguard, was an overwhelming symbol of human perseverance. Despite its rough edges, it was powerful. The first test run wasn't perfect, systems malfunctioned, and the crew was green. But it held together. It worked. And in that moment, humanity realized that it wasn't just building ships. They were building hope. And then, just as Earth was beginning to assemble its first serious line of defense, the Exathrians made a move. The first wave of their next assault arrived. More ships, larger and heavily armed. Earth's fledgling fleet was ready, but only just. The world watched as the battle unfolded in the atmosphere above what was left of Tokyo. Humanity's first engagement with the Exathrians was nothing short of chaos. Small human vessels, still vulnerable, darted between massive, towering enemy warships. There was no grand strategy, no precision, just the raw grit of the human spirit. Against all odds, the untested fleet held its ground. Through a series of desperate maneuvers, they exploited a flaw in the Sathrian ship's energy shield, a weakness that had gone unnoticed by the invaders. Human pilots, ordinary men and women who had once flown commercial jets or worked as engineers, showed unparalleled bravery. Their untrained but relentless tactics caught the invaders off guard. For every ship Earth lost, they destroyed 2 of the Sathrians' smaller fighters, a sign of progress that sent a spark of hope across the planet. It was a hard-fought, costly victory, and the fleet was far from perfect, but humanity had proven something important. They could fight. They could adapt. The battle had ended with Earth's first tangible victory, but the war was far from over. Humanity had only just begun to understand the full scale of what they were facing. The dust of Earth's first victory was still settling when the Xathrians, now aware of humanity's persistence, unleashed a new wave of attacks. This time, it was different. The invaders had regrouped, their forces reinvigorated, and their tactics refined. They sent their flagship, the Sovereign Ark, a dreadnought the size of a city, along with a fleet of larger, more powerful warships to crush Earth's resistance once and for all. The Xathrians were confident. They thought Earth's victory was a fluke, a small thorn in their side that would soon be eradicated. However, humanity, battered and bruised, had learned from their previous encounter. The makeshift fleet of mismatched ships now sailed with a sense of urgency and strategy. As they faced the incoming Xathrian forces, Earth's commanders understood that they could no longer rely on brute force or sheer numbers. Instead, they would fight with everything that made them human: creativity, adaptability, and the will to survive. It would be a war of tactics, not firepower. The Xathrians were not prepared for this. They had come to see Earth as an inferior species, something easily wiped out by their superior technology. But human ingenuity turned out to be the Xathrians' greatest blind spot. Commander Ilara Jensen, a former fighter pilot who now led Earth's military operations, laid out a plan that no one would have expected. She understood that Earth's fleet couldn't stand up to the Xathrian dreadnought in direct combat. So she developed a strategy that involved guerrilla-style warfare, taking advantage of Earth's environment and the unfamiliarity of the terrain. The fleet would split into smaller, faster ships and strike with precision, hitting the Xathrian fleet where they least expected. The battle took place in the outer asteroid belt, a barren wasteland of rocky debris and uncharted fragments. To the Xathrians, it was just an obstacle in their path, something to be easily navigated. But to Earth's fleet, it was a chance to level the playing field. Ships from every nation now operated in tight-knit squads, moving like a swarm of wasps. The fleet's speed and agility, combined with Earth's expert knowledge of their home system, became their greatest asset. The first engagement was an ambush. As the Xathrian dreadnought led its fleet into the asteroid field, they were immediately met with a barrage of smaller human fighters. These were not large, imposing warships, but small, nimble craft that darted in and out of the debris, using the rocks as shields. They engaged the Xathrians in a hit-and-run style of warfare, taking down one or two of the alien fighters, then retreating before the larger ships could respond. The Xathrians, caught off guard, were unable to track the human ships with their advanced targeting systems. Earth's fighters used the asteroid field to their advantage, staying out of the line of sight and delivering devastating blows with pinpoint accuracy. At the same time, another group of Earth's ships, heavily modified cargo vessels, launched a series of daring, calculated strikes against the Xathrians' supply chain. The cargo ships, usually used for transport, were repurposed into massive missile platforms, their holds packed with improvised explosives. They hid among the asteroids, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. When the Xathrian convoy entered range, they launched a coordinated barrage, crippling a number of the alien fleet's support vessels and disrupting their supply lines. The Xathrians, stunned by this unanticipated approach, attempted to regroup. But Earth's forces were already on the move again. Ilara Jensen, watching from the command center aboard the Vanguard, could see the alien fleet floundering. The Xathrians, though technologically superior, were not used to this style of warfare. Small, unpredictable, and relentless. As the battle raged on, Earth's fleet continued to hit and run, exploiting every weakness, forcing the Xathrians to fight on humanity's terms. The battle was not without its losses. The humans sacrificed many ships, their crews pushing themselves beyond the limits of endurance. But the strategy was working. By the end of the engagement, Earth's forces had succeeded in crippling a third of the Xathrian fleet, far more than anyone had expected. It wasn't a victory in the traditional sense. Earth had not destroyed the Sovereign Ark or any of the largest ships, but they had accomplished something more profound. They had proven that despite being the underdog, humanity had the capacity to outthink and outmaneuver the invaders. As the Xathrians retreated, nursing their wounded fleet, the humans took a moment to breathe. But they knew this was only the beginning. There was still much to be done, and the war was far from over. But for the first time since the invasion, Earth's forces felt a sense of hope, a belief that they could actually win. The taste of victory, though sweet, was short-lived. Earth's battle fleet had struck a blow against the Xathrians, but the cost had been heavy. Many ships were lost, and their crews had paid the price for their unyielding courage. But the victory was a beacon of hope, proof that humanity could stand toe-to-toe with an enemy that once seemed invincible. Yet, as the survivors patched up their wounds and took stock of their ships, the next phase of the war began to take shape, one that would challenge Earth's very survival. The Xathrians, humiliated by their retreat, were not the kind of enemy to take defeat lightly. They were ruthless, and their pride was a weapon as dangerous as any ship. The destruction of a third of their fleet had not only angered them, but also motivated them to adapt. The invaders understood now that Earth wasn't going to crumble under the weight of their superior technology. The humans had made it clear they were fighters, and their resolve was unbreakable. To the Xathrians, it was time for a reckoning. The Sovereign Ark, their flagship, had withdrawn to a safe distance, hidden within the orbit of Neptune. It was there that the alien leaders regrouped, making plans to crush humanity's resistance once and for all. They would stop underestimating Earth, they decided, and begin to fight with every resource at their disposal. The next move would be decisive, a final strike that would wipe Earth's fleet off the map. On Earth, the High Command understood the Xathrians' intentions. The lull in fighting was fleeting, and the fleet's leaders gathered in secret, preparing for the inevitable escalation. Commander Ilara Jensen stood before a massive digital map of the solar system, her finger tracing the path the Xathrians were likely to take. They were coming. The question was no longer if, but when. In the heart of the new United Earth Command, she and the other leaders formulated their most daring strategy yet, to take the fight directly to the Xathrians before they could unleash their full might. Humanity had already proven it could strike when least expected. Now, they would take that principle and apply it on a larger scale. Humans would strike first. The first step was to gather intelligence. Despite the Xathrians' overwhelming firepower, there were cracks in their defenses, weaknesses that could be exploited. Earth scientists had studied the wreckage of alien ships, learning about their shields, weapons, and tactics. Armed with this new knowledge, they built a countermeasure, a device capable of disrupting the Xathrian energy shields for a brief but critical moment. It wasn't much, but it was enough. If humanity could land a single devastating blow at the heart of the Sovereign Ark, it could turn the tide of the war. It was a dangerous plan with no guarantees. Ilara knew that the Xathrians would be ready. Their warships were better equipped, and their numbers far exceeded Earth's. But humanity had learned one essential thing. They couldn't play by the Xathrians' rules. They had to disrupt their strategy with boldness, speed, and sheer audacity. The fleet assembled. Smaller, faster ships were selected for a deep space incursion, an assault on the Xathrian flagship itself. They would travel undetected, skirting past the edges of the solar system, using Neptune's orbit as a shield from detection. The plan was risky. Even if Earth's forces succeeded in reaching the Sovereign Ark, they would be outnumbered and outgunned. But it was the only shot they had at ending the war. As the fleet gathered at the edge of the solar system, there was no fanfare, no grand speeches or pep talks. There was just quiet resolve. The soldiers aboard the vessels knew that this might be their final mission, and yet they didn't hesitate. It was no longer about national pride or borders. It was about the survival of the human race. Each fighter pilot, each engineer, each soldier carried the weight of humanity's future on their shoulders. As Earth's fleet made its way into the cold depths of space, a message from Commander Jensen was broadcast to every ship in the fleet. We've come this far together. And no matter what happens next, we fight for our world, for our future, for everything we love. The fleet, ready for what might be their final confrontation, moved silently toward the heart of enemy territory. The reckoning was at hand. The vast expanse of space felt more oppressive than ever as Earth's fleet silently made its way toward the Sovereign Ark. Every pilot, every soldier, every engineer aboard knew the gravity of the mission. The war had reached its breaking point. This assault was humanity's last chance to shift the balance, to prove that they were not just survivors, but a force capable of changing the course of history. The strategy was simple in theory, but the execution would be anything but. Earth's fleet would sneak into the heart of the Xathrian stronghold and strike at their flagship, the Sovereign Ark, with everything they had. The element of surprise was their only advantage. The Xathrians had likely detected some of Earth's movement, but they couldn't have known just how close the humans were. The silence of space was now both a shield and a threat. Every crew member was on edge, knowing that one wrong move, one slip-up, could spell disaster. Commander Ilara Jensen stood in the command center aboard the Vanguard, staring at the digital map that projected their path through the darkness of space. Their route was marked by the smallest of blips: asteroids, remnants of ancient moons, debris from old battles, each a potential hazard. Yet they had no choice but to weave through them. Their only hope of avoiding detection was to remain in the shadows, never giving the Xathrians the chance to launch a counterattack before it was too late. "We'll need to stay sharp," Jensen's voice rang through the fleet's comms. "This is it. There's no turning back." Each ship in the fleet, from the smallest fighter to the modified cargo vessels, was ready. The fleet had become a finely tuned machine, a testament to the tireless work of every individual who had contributed to the war effort. The makeshift ships had been transformed over months of preparation, their imperfections polished into something formidable. The Xathrians might have superior technology, but Earth had something far more valuable: human determination. As they neared the edge of Neptune's orbit, the first signs of the Xathrian defenses began to reveal themselves. At first, it was just a ripple in the sensors, a minor fluctuation, perhaps from a deep space probe or a small scout ship. But then the real threat materialized. A flotilla of Xathrian warships appeared, positioned between the human fleet and the Sovereign Ark, likely sent to intercept any attempts at an attack. The humans had been discovered. Jensen's heart raced. The element of surprise was gone, but they were not without a plan. "Form up into attack groups," she ordered, her voice steady despite the tension. "We have one shot at this. We take them down, or we die trying." The fleet spread out, small ships weaving in and out of each other, creating a confusing, unpredictable pattern. Human pilots, now accustomed to high-risk maneuvers, dove into the enemy lines with deadly precision. The smaller ships darted between the larger Xathrian vessels, using their speed and agility to avoid the alien ships' powerful energy beams. Fighters launched a barrage of missiles, timed perfectly to overwhelm the Xathrian shields, while others planted EMP charges on key targets. It was chaos, a disorienting blend of flashing weapons and shifting silhouettes in the darkness of space. Xathrian warships retaliated with brutal efficiency, firing concentrated energy blasts that obliterated anything in their path. But the humans were relentless, driven by the knowledge that their future depended on the success of this mission. The odds were overwhelming, but they fought with a desperation that Xathrians couldn't comprehend. Amidst the battle, the Vanguard pushed forward, a spearhead cutting through the enemy formation. The Sovereign Ark loomed in the distance, its massive form casting a shadow over the surrounding space. The flagship's weapons, capable of vaporizing entire fleets with a single shot, began to charge. If it fired, it would be all over. There was no time to lose. "Target the central power core," Jensen ordered. "Get in close. Now or never." The fleet's last remaining strike force, a squadron of bombers modified with the newly developed EMP disruptors, surged forward. Their mission was clear: get close enough to the Sovereign Ark to deliver a devastating blow to its power systems, disrupting the shields long enough for a follow-up strike. But as they closed the gap, the Xathrians' defenses reacted faster than anticipated. The flagship's secondary weapons fired, tearing through the front lines of Earth's fleet with terrifying precision. The battle had reached its crescendo, and the stakes could not have been higher. The enemy was closing in from every direction, but the humans pressed on, unwilling to give up. The Vanguard was the last hope. As the bombers approached the Sovereign Ark, their weapons primed and ready, there was only one thing left to do: give it everything. The Sovereign Ark loomed before them, a behemoth of alien engineering, bristling with weapons and defenses designed to crush any foe daring enough to approach. Earth's fleet, now battered and broken from the Xathrian retaliation, had reached the final stage of their desperate mission. Every ship, every pilot, had sacrificed more than anyone could have imagined. And still, they pressed on. The Xathrians, realizing that the human fleet was not backing down, had unleashed everything they had. The flagship's devastating energy cannons fired in rapid succession, and smaller warships zoomed in for relentless attacks. The fighters sent against the vanguard were nearly unrecognizable, having endured far too much damage, but they kept fighting. Their energy was running low, and there were fewer ships left with each passing minute, but the human will to survive was stronger than ever. Commander Ilara Jensen, eyes focused on the tactical screen in front of her, held her breath. The EMP disruptor-equipped bombers were only a few clicks away, weaving in and out of the Xathrian warships, their targets locked on the heart of the Sovereign Ark's energy core. The timing had to be perfect. If they didn't hit the mark, everything would be lost. "Bombers on my mark." Ilara's voice crackled over the comms, steady but with the weight of finality in it. She held her breath. There was no room for error. The vanguard was drawing fire from two Xathrian destroyers that had flanked them on both sides, their shields glowing as they attempted to surround the human flagship. Ilara's crew fought valiantly, with every ounce of courage they had left, but the situation was critical. Each ship that fell was a blow to Earth's chances. Yet, through the chaos, Ilara saw something, a glimmer of resolve in her crew. The bond between them was unbreakable now. They fought not just for survival, but for each other, for their planet, for humanity. As the bombers reached the Sovereign Ark, their sensors aligned with surgical precision. Their EMP charges, carefully calibrated from months of research, were primed to breach the Ark's powerful energy shields. They were nearly there, just a heartbeat away from delivering the critical strike. The Xathrian flagship fired once more, a deadly shot from its primary weapon, streaking through space toward the vanguard. Ilara watched in horror as the energy beam lanced toward them, knowing that no maneuver could save them in time. In that moment, something remarkable happened. One of Earth's remaining fighter squadrons, at the risk of their own lives, darted in front of the vanguard, intercepting the blast. The Xathrian weapon collided with their ships in a brilliant explosion of light. The fighters, overwhelmed by the blast, were torn apart, but their sacrifice bought the vanguard precious seconds. "Now," Ilara shouted, her voice rising over the din of battle. The bombers, with their last remaining fuel and weapons, plunged toward the Sovereign Ark, firing their EMP disruptors with pinpoint accuracy. The devices struck the flagship's energy shield, creating a shockwave of interference. For a moment, the massive ship's defenses flickered, its shields wavering before collapsing altogether. In that instant, the human fleet seized the opportunity, launching everything they had. Missiles, energy blasts, and cannon fire, all aimed directly at the heart of the Sovereign Ark. The flagship's hull groaned under the pressure, and massive explosions erupted across its surface. But even as the flagship staggered, the Xathrians didn't give up. Their command ship retaliated with everything it had left, unleashing waves of firepower. But it was too late. The human fleet had found its mark. As the battle raged on, the Sovereign Ark's core began to destabilize. Fires erupted from within the alien vessel. The Xathrians, realizing their impending defeat, scrambled to escape, but the damage was irreversible. Earth's final gambit had worked. Commander Jensen watched as the flagship's massive form began to break apart, the Xathrian warship finally succumbing to the combined might of Earth's ingenuity and resolve. The energy signature of the Sovereign Ark flared one last time before it disintegrated into a fiery blaze that illuminated the darkness of space. The Xathrians' greatest weapon was no more. But the cost had been heavy. The human fleet was decimated. Of the hundreds of ships that had entered the battle, fewer than 20 remained, most heavily damaged. The vast majority of pilots and soldiers had given their lives to ensure this victory. There was no cheering, no celebration, just silence. In the aftermath, Earth's remaining forces regrouped, tending to the wounded and recovering what they could. But as the debris of the Xathrian fleet drifted into the void, Commander Jensen stood before the remains of the Sovereign Ark, her face somber, knowing that their fight wasn't truly over. The war had been won, but the cost of victory had been astronomical. However, for the first time in a long while, humanity dared to believe in something greater, that they were capable of defeating the invaders, of taking back their world. The wreckage of the sovereign Ark drifted quietly into the abyss of space, a smoldering testament to humanity's unyielding will to survive. The last remnants of the Xathrian fleet scattered into the cold expanse, their command shattered, their cohesion broken. Earth's battle fleet, though battered and bloodied, had emerged victorious. But the victory was bittersweet. The price had been steep. Commander Ilara Jensen stood on the observation deck of the Vanguard, gazing out at the debris field. She had expected to feel relief, but instead, all she could see was the quiet devastation of their efforts. Thousands of lives had been lost, heroes who had given everything to protect their home. Their sacrifice would never be forgotten, but it also left a heavy weight on her heart. As the fleet's leaders convened, there was no celebration. There was only reflection, mourning, and the acknowledgement that the war, while won, had altered humanity forever. "Report," Ilara said, turning from the window to face her commanding officers. The battle had left a deep mark on the Earth's forces. The Vanguard, despite being the flagship, had taken significant damage. The remaining ships were far from pristine, each one a symbol of the resilience and determination that had driven humanity to the brink of extinction and back. Engineers were working around the clock to restore what they could, but the scars of the war would take years to heal. "We've confirmed the destruction of the Sovereign Ark, and the Xathrian fleet is in full retreat," Captain Layla Moran reported. "We're receiving signals from the Earth Defense Network. The invasion is officially over. The remaining Xathrian forces are scattered, and we've intercepted their retreat signals." Ilara nodded, her mind racing. "What about the rest of their armada?" "Gone. For now," Layla replied. "We've crippled their command structure. The remaining Xathrians don't have the organization to mount any more large-scale attacks. We've won, Commander." The words felt hollow. Ilara knew the battle had been won, but the war's true cost wasn't measured in ships or casualties. It was measured in the unity humanity had found in the face of destruction. The humans had come together as a single force, no longer divided by borders, ideologies, or pride. They had united for survival. And that unity, forged in the fires of war, was now their most precious asset. "Rebuilding begins now," Ilara said, her voice steady but filled with purpose. "We've lost a lot, but we've gained something that can never be taken from us. Our future. We will not let the Xathrians return. We will ensure they understand this is our world." Over the next few months, Earth's survivors rebuilt not just their cities but their very identity. The war had shown them their capacity for endurance, for sacrifice, and for ingenuity. Humanity had fought an alien force with advanced technology, and while the Xathrians had underestimated them, the humans had not just survived, they had thrived under pressure. They had become something new, something stronger than they were before. In the wake of the battle, Earth established a new global alliance, an alliance not just for defense, but for growth, exploration, and cooperation. The scars of war would remain, but the hope for a brighter future began to blossom. Earth's forces, now fully united, began the painstaking process of turning their military technology into tools for peace, using their newfound knowledge to reach beyond their home planet, eager to discover what lay among the stars. Months later, a series of deep space telescopes detected something strange. Signals emanating from a distant star system. The Xathrians might have retreated for now, but their presence in the universe was far from gone. Humanity, armed with the lessons of the war, prepared for what came next. This time, however, they were not afraid. Ilara Jensen stood at the forefront of Earth's defense forces, looking out into the unknown with a steady gaze. "We'll be ready. No one invades Earth again." For humanity, the rise of their battle fleet was not just the end of an invasion. It was the beginning of a new era. An era where Earth no longer stood as a fragile planet. easily overlooked by the cosmos, but as a force to be reckoned with. The Exathrians had learned the hard way. Humanity would never bow. The stars were now open to them, and Earth was ready to face whatever came next with unwavering resolve.